Alright, so check this out, guys. We haven't been here for a little bit. There's been this hiatus in between everything. Merlin destroyed all of our audio equipment.
No, I
He
didn't.
threw it in off one of the many Portland rivers. Sorry, not Portland rivers. One of the many Portland bridges that is over a river, and he threw it all in there because he was angry at one of our recordings where I called him a little poo-poo baby. I actually was managed to pull the SD card from the seaweed from underneath the Portland River and save this little bit. So here, I'll play that little bit of Merlin freaking out. Click. Hey, yeah, you're a little poo-poo baby. Wait, no, Merlin, please don't. I was just joking. Please. Oh my God. Oh, Jesus. Oh. Yeah, it was pretty crazy, but don't you worry. Thanks to Joe Biden's extensive every trans person gets a podcast policy, I was able to hook us up with two Bluetooth Yeti microphones hooked up to a 4K running Omega Drive computer. So we're back up and running. Everything's up. And hopefully Merlin will again not go into a big gorilla rage and destroy our very expensive new equipment provided to us by the Biden administration.
I think I'm gonna do it right now.
Oh no! Oh no! Please don't!
Gay programming.
Hey, what's up? Welcome to Gay Programming. As always, I'm your host, Marceline, and I'm joined by my boyfriend and lovely co-host, Merlin Kirby.
Hi.
Cry. Hey there!
No, that was unintentional.
Hey there, guys! It's me, the 12-year-old! How you doing?
I'm so embarrassed.
Yeah, you should be. They're all gonna laugh at you in the fucking comments. They're like, did you let this little child walk in? This little thing. Well, I didn't want him to come in. I literally came home from work one day, and the window was broken. It got nudged by a fucking screwdriver underneath. It just got it fucking yanked right up. And now he's here. And he steals my food. He fucking eats all my fucking apples. I've been starving for 2 months because this fucker has been stealing all my food.
No.
I guess I need to stop doing bits. We can't have this whole podcast be bits. So
Yeah, sure.
Let's catch up, audience, because we've had a lot of shit happening. That's why we haven't been uploading at all this podcast. I haven't even been trying or working on it. Yeah, you want to talk. I wanted to talk a little bit about what's been happening with some of the homeless incidents that have been happening here that we were involved with.
Yeah. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I guess I'll lay it out that basically we went to what's their name? I want to get more involved with them, but
the organization?
Yeah, progressive.
Nope.
What? Housing?
Yes.
Fuck it. Well, we're good revolutionaries. I'm gonna edit the name in.
It's People's Housing Project.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, we did a little event with People's Housing Project, or at least we were there while it was happening, and we offered our assistance in what we could. Merlin was offering medical supplies and was also on standby in case the fucking thuggish Gestapo Portland policers decided to do anything. There was a lot of people who showed up, so it was like, it wasn't like, hundreds. It was probably like, I want to say like 80 people probably at most. Yeah. But that was still enough to be like, the cops are not gonna, this is 80 white people from like, neighborhoods where if they got killed, the fucking news stations would be all over it. But yeah, so they didn't do anything, but they were there and they were kind of harassing. But yeah, that kind of was, where basically the event was they were having demonstrations where they were going to show construction of tents and other structures.
What were they made out of? Because you were actually helping with some of that. So I know there was pallet wood and metal frame of a shed or something.
Yeah, it was like some metal frames that basically held up this bigger tarp, and that was on top of like these platforms that were like, there's probably 9 of them, and they were all put together to make like a big square. And then there's this, I don't even know what kind of material it is, but it's kind of the material that was one to just keep all the platforms together, but also was kind of to keep heat in and cold out, essentially.
Like an insulated tarp kind of situation.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. Someone explained it. I am a big dumb bitch. I don't know any of that shit, but they told me to staple it down, and I did. Yeah, and there were some videos on my Instagram, FemMarks, if you want to check, of fucking park rangers trying to harass, which is pretty funny. But yeah, what was your take on the whole thing?
Oh gosh, I mean, it kind of was really interesting to see, because I've dealt with the police very few times in my life.
I lived with them.
That's true. Well, I mean, when they're working.
I also dealt with them then too, a lot of the time.
But
it's not a lot of difference, I can promise you.
Yeah, but there's always this vibe that I get. That a lot of police where they're like trying to be all cool and hip and friendly, but also they're like ready to assault you at any given moment, and they can't really hide that. And I'm not saying that the police there felt like they were ready to assault us or anything by that means, but also just like they're very condescending is, I guess, the words I'm looking for.
Well, yeah, it's very typical cop mentality of like, well, why are you getting mad at me?
Yeah.
I didn't give the order. I didn't say, I agree with you. I support you. I, listen, but, they're always, trying to, distance themselves by saying, I am just a cog in the bureaucratic machine, and I am just moving with the way of the flow. I'm being mindful of it. I'm listening to your plight, but I still have a job and I still need to get it done. And it's like, well, okay, I don't give a shit. I don't give a crap if you're like, oh, well, I'm just doing my job. It's like, well, at the end of the day, your job is the thing I'm against, the thing that you're trying to accomplish.
There are so many other jobs.
It's like, it's so ridiculous when you see so many fucking cops, on TikTok or just any social media or just anyone who's, supporting of cops with the big old fucking, Punisher fucking logo or whatever and the American flag. But they're just, people who are always, bitching about victim complex with other people, are always, espousing that everyone's, so fucking sensitive. But they've co-opted social justice rhetoric and conscientiousness and of being aware of the harm that you cause, mindful mentality, and they've co-opted it to the point where it's just listen, I know I'm a Nazi thug who's smashing your fucking skull in with this fucking nightstick, but listen, I have it hard too. My wife doesn't give me blowjobs.
Yeah.
Because she's a little uncomfortable, and my tummy aches because I'm never sleeping well. Everyone spits in my face. Everyone thinks I'm scum, and they hate me, and they rightfully should.
Yeah. I mean, it was just a whole bunch of ridiculousness, especially because, ultimately, kind of illegally, might I add.
Yeah, they tore down the structures, and they basically had no warrant to do so. No, at least from what we understood. But yeah, it looked pretty. They also just stole some property. They just
they often do. But the thing is, they didn't even post the area with a sweep notice or anything. Yeah. They just showed up and were like, "We're gonna steal your glasses and your ID and your phone and tear down your home and everything." Which I don't know.
Yeah, in a public park that wasn't even.
Yeah, in a country that's so intense about anti-terrorism, I find that very ironic. But.
And the organizers anticipated that. I mean, it was kind of all part of.
Yeah, I don't think anybody got hurt.
Yeah, I know. Thankfully, I mean, but it was just it just looked bad for them, and hopefully this story just keeps getting spread. But right now it's we're still waiting to see what happens this weekend if people continue. Because I know there might have been talks of some stuff happening more, but I don't know. But we'll see on that. But yeah, that was something we just wanted to update. Things that are happening here in Portland, Oregon, the home of anarchy.
Also, to quickly clarify, at least from my point of view, we were only there on one of the days, and some of the events that happened later, we were just kind of understanding via online. So if some extremely fine details are off, I apologize for that.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, no, I mean, we're friends.
We're putting
of this,
stuff
all
together.
This. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, but we're just spreading the word because I think it's important, and it's a prize story that's still not going to get spread around, honestly, because the Oregonians too busy talking about the sports bra.
Oh my god,
it's a cool place.
Yeah. Honestly, I want to talk about today a little bit.
Okay, what's up?
Well, just because, like, I was telling you a bit about it, but... So another thing we do here, on occasion, is make a whole bunch of fucking food. So much food.
Oh yeah, how was that? How was the food distribution?
Yeah, well, so I got up at 7, I made a whole bunch of vegan hot meals, and not a whole bunch. Honestly, today I only made 25, which I felt really
That's
bad
still
about.
pretty kick-ass, I couldn't do it.
Well, yeah, made some meals, we went out, and, it went pretty well. A lot of people were really grateful. Our friend had coffee. A lot of people were really into the coffee.
That's the option R.
Yeah, right.
Our friend knew she's the type of chick who knows what the party needs and always comes with it.
But yeah, so however, I did want to share something that was really, really unfortunate. We were going kind of near this area that's like a big touristy area here in Portland, more so than the entire city. And I won't share the name of the business just because I want to keep the person's identity private. But
yeah, man, you can't let these 25 people know about that.
Well, I don't know.
This fan base has constantly proven itself to be very aggressive.
but I don't know.
No, I know.
Yeah, there was this houseless woman who was sitting on the ground, and we were giving her some stuff, and she was happy about it, and she was crying and telling us about how some shitty fucking kids were like saying like, oh, can you give us your blanket or like whatever, and then kicked her in the face to the point where her mouth was bleeding. And she's like crying and asking me like, has it stopped bleeding yet? And thank you so much for the food. And I was like, yeah, it's stopped bleeding. And I felt really shitty because I didn't bring any of my medical supplies, and I felt like I could have cleaned that up for her so well, but I couldn't. But what I did do is I was just like, I can offer you a hug, because I could see she was like shaking, and we did hug, and it was great. But like, I don't know, I guess content warning for all of that. But I just felt so bad that I couldn't do more, and I think it's just such a real reality of things, because I don't know, I think when you hear stories like that, a lot of people are like, oh, well, that happens when, like, 2% of the time, or, like, it's really easy to kind of downplay it in your own head, even subconsciously, I think, but then, like, seeing someone bloody and in tears in front of you is, like, not jarring, but just, like, I don't know, a lot.
Yeah, and, there's a couple of things. I think the first thing I wanted to say is, I told you this before when you first told me this, but, I wouldn't beat yourself up over, like, you didn't have the items and you can only get what you can get right there. You can't be like, oh, I'll rush over to my house and grab my fucking med pack and I'll be right back. Don't you worry, doll.
Right.
But, that is, like, a really fucked up story. And I think a lot of people, too, are, like, especially the people who might be listening to this podcast, or really just anyone who are, like, listening to digital media at their job or at their home while they're relaxing or on their way to work, whatever. We live in, like, pretty isolated, very I don't want to say mundane lives, because I do think, all of our lives are pretty rich in life
Yeah.
and character, and sometimes can be quite dark in very subtle ways, or things that we don't necessarily think are all that great. But we're constantly just like consuming media,
Yeah.
and that's the only thing that we're really ever doing, and working, and just like continuing the cycle of like on your grind set.
Mm-hmm.
That we, even in this country, I feel like we kind of try to like not even like focus on anything. That's why I really hate that fucking phrase, protect your energy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've seen that more. I think it's becoming less popular. I don't think people really liked the big push, but for like
Yeah.
for like half a month, it was like everywhere. Every piece of clothes I was seeing was like, protect your energy, protect your energy. And I hate phrases like that, because I think it always just like keeps pushing us from being like, what you really need to be doing is
Yeah.
focusing on yourself and only yourself, and not focusing on yourself in relation to everybody else, and really trying to realize that the suffering or sorrow or the sadness or discomfort that you're feeling can be felt just as immensely by other people with far far worse material situations than your own.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, that's like a big thing where, it's kind of one of those moments where, like, yeah, compassion fatigue and burnout are huge, major, real things that everyone needs to consider. But even if not for yourself, more so for, like, if you do a whole bunch of great mutual aid stuff to the point where you burn out and don't do anything for months, then, like, the cause has lost you for that few months. Which is something I always try to remind people, kind of like I'm going to use a medical analogy because that's what I know a little bit about. But like, how if you're going to provide first aid, they're like, "Oh, make sure wherever you're running into is safe. Don't try to be a hero and like run into where there's like a fire or something, because if something happens to you when EMTs arrive, now they're going to have two fucked up people instead of one." So it's kind of the same thing, I think, emotionally, if that makes sense. But at the same time, yeah, I definitely agree. If like there's this big, especially in America, like your individual value in a capitalist system is more valued than what can you provide as a whole from the working class to the working class, I guess.
Yeah,
If that makes sense.
or just like this
just
general
as a community.
Yeah, and I mean, there's just not a lot of like push to create much of, like, community centers. I feel like a lot of people's their aspirations is like to buy a home and to like make a family in that home and be in that home with that family.
Yeah.
Rather than like I don't see as much people dreaming, or at least aspiring, or at least there being like a really easy pathway for people to like construct really meaningful community connections that are supported through like a big like infrastructure system from like a bigger community. Like I think I'm sorry if I'm like going all over the place, but I think especially because I kind of wanted this episode to be about sex ed, and specifically about gender education for people. And in relation to how, for instance, like, I right now finally have gotten to the point where I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, I'm a woman. I describe myself as a woman. I believe myself to be a woman. And, even though I have scruff, I have leg hair, I'm literally the person who, whenever I say my name is Marcie, they're like, huh, so your parents named you a girl? You're like that Johnny Cash song, A Boy Named Sue. Besides all the, the normal bullshit of being someone who's trans, like, it's the first time I've ever actually felt like I knew what I was doing, or I actually felt whole, and I actually, and while I still have dysphoric feelings about myself and depression about myself, I actually have a name for what those things are. I can actually see them and visualize them in my mind. And because I can do that, I can handle them much better. And I just keep thinking about all the times when I was younger, when I was fucking miserable, when I, like, literally, I remember my moms would show me, like, a picture of when I was at, like, my worst depression when I was younger. And granted, it was from other things too, but, you know, I do think there was something underneath it, at the heart of it, and I think it was this struggle that I was having inside of my brain about my gender. But it was literally just like a picture of me, like, fucking, like, my head solidly, like, sunken, like, fucking just eyes pointing directly to the fucking ground, or at least they would be if they weren't, like, already covered by my palms, which were just, like, sinking into my face. Like, literally just, like, you know, the type of sight you would see from, like, a bench from a homeless person with, like, a bunch of cans next to them. Just, like, a really sad scene of just someone who's, like, in genuine anguish. And not even from anything material. Like, it's just from a lack of understanding or ability to accept what they really are, what I really was. And I genuinely wonder if I went to a school that had a comprehensive sex education that didn't just include, like, well, a man and a woman love each other and then they have sex and then they have a baby, but be careful because sometimes they have AIDS. Like, very cis-normative, hetero kind of fucking talk. But if I literally had, like, a discussion of, hey, some people feel like they're not the right gender they were assigned at birth. Some people, and this is a cliche, feel like they're a woman trapped in a man's body or a man trapped in a woman's body. Some people don't feel like they're a woman or a man. And, you know, and go on to so forth and so forth. Actually have, like, a fucking strong backbone of genuine humanitarian, humanities, gender studies. From, like, a very early age, and just, like, how that would have impacted me and my mental health and my path. Like, it would have been, like, night and day. I think I would have saved myself so much fucking heartache, and I think so many other trans people would. And I think we would have a lot more trans people just in general as a community if we did have some kind of fundamental backing of societal infrastructure supporting our community and our education. But we don't. And so the only thing that's relied, it comes from direct action and actual communication from people. I'm sorry, I went on for a huge, big tangent.
You're good.
I don't mean, but yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a big part of the work I did with that super secret organization that shall not be named. It was
The Secret Dark Organization.
Nah, it was Planned Parenthood. I don't know if you have to edit that out, but it was Planned Parenthood.
I don't think they give a shit. Like, who cares?
I mean, like, they have some... I had to attend volunteer training. They have some rules about, like, talking about them, like, in media, but I think it's only if you're sharing, like, patient names.
Yeah,
or, like,
no, I mean,
stuff.
like, if we're talking about this in, like, you know, even a societal or relation, you know, we can talk as long as we just keep out names and persons.
Yeah,
stuff,
right.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, that's a big part of what I did with Planned Parenthood was, like... Because one of the other things Florida was doing was change it... Because right at the time, I don't know if it passed or not, but at the time... sex ed in Florida was you were automatically enrolled, but your parent had the right to sign a form to opt you out of it. They wanted to make it so that you were automatically unenrolled and your parent had to sign a form to opt you into it, which obviously would just change it so badly that like 90% of kids would be getting like no sex ed at all compared to what Florida offered in the first place, which might as well have been.
Yeah, because all the parents are working like fucking like 2 jobs and they get exhausted and the kid doesn't even remember and it keeps it smashed in his fucking pay. Like, these people fucking know what's going to happen. Like,
so yeah, no, like we did a lot of pushing for like the fact that sex ed as itself is not even good enough and you're trying to limit it even further. So yeah, no, I mean, I'm a total advocate for a lot of that stuff. And I also want to share how interesting it is, because I definitely relate to you on all of the trans stuff for sure, obviously. But it's also really interesting because that's how I felt too when you were talking about being able to give a name to something. That's how I felt when I was diagnosed with like schizoaffective, because like, and this is kind of its own little mini tangent that's
No, please,
unrelated
yeah.
to anything, but
We got an hour to go.
well, okay, I remember I grew up in a very religious household, and I remember when I started hallucinating, like 10 years younger or more than 10 years younger than the average age for hallucinations to start with schizoaffective. I was literally like a child. I started hallucinating, and I thought it was because God fucking hated me, which sounds really funny, but like, I don't know. Imagine being a kid and seeing these fucking Lovecraftian horrors in your bedroom, and you're like, wow, it must be like God's wrath because that's the only thing that could be making life so terrible. And you just don't have any other explanation for it, and you're like, what the fuck did I do? And then, like, sorry, that's probably all way too personal, but then you go to a doctor, and he's like, nah, your brain's fucky, but it's fine. And you're like, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. And I think that's very similar to like a lot of trans experiences I've heard of just being like, what the fuck is wrong with me? And then you're like, oh no, it's a thing.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like it comes...
And you're just kind of retroactively brought up to speed on that.
Yeah, and you don't feel crazy anymore.
Yeah.
You don't feel like, oh, the problem is me and my outlook on things. Mm-hmm. And because I'm reading, I really recommend for anybody who hasn't heard Berlin's Third Sex. I'm currently reading it. I'm only at like probably 40 pages, but it's a really great book. It's from, what's his name, Merlin? I always forget.
Magnus Hirschfeld.
I didn't want to say it and look like a big dummy when I said like Fergus or whatever. So yeah, Berlin's Third Sex by Magnus Hirschfeld, who is a really interesting character. You should totally look more up about him if you don't know, but he was kind of one of the first early supporters of LGBTQIA, trans movement, all like, estrogen, HRT, kind of big pioneer of that. He did a lot of research in just the gay community as a whole. And Berlin's Third Sex is kind of one of his few studies that we still have, because a lot of that shit got burnt by a little cool party that took over Germany in the 1940s. But some of it survived. Thankfully, it's Berlin's Third Sex. And, I'm just reading it, and I'm like, literally, he recounts some of the personal experiences he's had with people who, now I think we would describe as trans, or they're definitely someone who have some kind of gender dysphoria or something along those lines. And just like describing their stories, and I'm like, shit, that happened to me. Like, I did that. Like, that, I had something similar. Like, I had that kind of similar sex dream, or I had this. And, I feel like there's a lot of people who just go like, oh, well, that's sex. That's like temptation that's created from media. When in actuality, these are things that are subconscious things that are trying to tell us something inside of our minds, or at least that's how I see. Because, like, why are you driven to those specific things? Mm-hmm. And it could just be like, well, might be you're gay, or you're trans, or some kind of gender, like, discussion that needs to be happening. Because, like, it certainly indicates something more than just being like a sin that God is against you. And I feel like that discussion is really needed, and much a genuine, educated discussion about sexual orientation and gender identity from an early age, so people don't have a really long period of wanting to kill themselves because they think they're a freak.
Yeah, especially now, like, I feel like ultimately, and I say this very genuinely and as a very positive thing, but I feel like ultimately humanity is kind of on this very slow path towards just like, and this is going to sound funny, but evolving past the need for gender. And like, yeah, like just I think ultimately the whole definition of what is a man, what is a woman, what is in between or outside of, as they should, these terms are going to become so broadened that they lose meaning altogether, and society will just move on without wasting time on these like white colonial depictions of what your body should correlate to where you stand in society. But I think especially now when that idea is still very much alive, like there needs to be more of a lean into, you know, anyone that is currently drifting outside of that, because that's unfortunately those whole ideas about what gender is and isn't are still so prevalent. Um, and you know what?
Oh yeah, like literally, I just had a Uber. Sorry, did you have something?
No, you go ahead.
I had an Uber drive. It was really funny because I finally changed my name on Uber to Marcie, and literally like the one of my recent Uber guys, who like man, every fucking Uber driver is like the most desperate man who's like just got out of alimony court. It's just like it's always the like saddest guy. I think I met like two people who are like, yeah, this guy seems cool. This guy like he's got his head on straight. This one, but all the rest are the latter description. Anyways, yeah. So he picks me up, and he's like, "Are you?" Looks at his phone, all confused. Marcie? And I'm like, "Yep." And he's like, "Wow, that's kind of weird." And just like this guy was clearly like kind of like just a psychotic cis man who, like, literally he was telling me about like I had a cute softball team member in here today, and they were like, "Oh, where's the good bars?" And I'm like, huh, I know where the good bars are. Like bragging to me about this. What I think is a 90% fake story about him being a softball team member.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I agree with you that I think that there's definitely a more stronger contingency of, of especially I want to say in particular in the trans movement as a whole. We're getting pretty militarized, and to the extent of like, we're getting really consistent with our message and really being like out there and trying to spread it and spread awareness of body standards and how this affects everybody, and getting everybody to relate to like a very personal struggle that has up until this point been a very tremendous, thing to even like get out there to any subsequent thing. But now we're in this situation where like, okay, we have it out. And it's been mostly thanks to dipshit conservatives who've just been like constantly pushing our shit.
Yeah.
Because they're like, did you see this TikTok? This TikTok where this guy, he's dressed like Bella Blossom from Powerpuff Girls and it's scary. Like, just everyone freaking out, but there's a lot more, gender questioning or gender, or like art that is really questioning the institutional standards and conceptions of beauty, of what, what is a man, what is a woman, what does that even mean, etc. And like and how does that harm people exactly with just standards. But also on the same side, I think there's definitely a contingency that I've seen that now are becoming even more radicalized to the other extent,
right,
where they're like, everybody's losing their fucking mind. I saw this guy wearing a skirt and it makes my head spin and scared.
Yeah.
And like there's totally guys out there where I'm like, if you push them in the right direction, like that Uber driver like that I had, if you push him in the right direction, get him on the right day, get him at the right crowd at the right moment, he would commit a hate crime. Oh yeah, like you get him in the right play,
Yeah.
Like I used to enjoy quite a bit of cis male media. Like the mighty Joker, non-binary Joker once said, all it takes is one bad day.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's definitely that energy that you get in a lot of people, and it's very interesting that I think if you're not of a minority group, you don't understand reading for that stuff, of course. Um,
I'll admit, like, until I've really kind of known more about myself and me, like, understanding, like, oh, I'm trans, like, I have this, like, like, now I'm actually, like, inadvertently, because of chasing what makes me happy, I'm putting a target on my back.
mhm.
And just because of that, I've noticed, like, just thinking back to my past and thinking about where I am now, I'm just like, oh, shit! Like, holy fucking crap, this is a nightmare world.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much horrible shit. Spooky ghosts and goblins everywhere. They're hiding in bureaucratic papers.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But while we're talking about sex ed and all that stuff, there's another very, very important point that I would like to share.
Okay.
It's something that I've thought for a long time, but there's actually a YouTube video. I'm halfway through watching it, and I watched it recently, and it kind of re-put the topic to the front of my brain. So I want to recommend it to everyone watching.
Oh yeah, I'll put a link down if you want to send it to me.
I'll send you a link, but it's called "You're Not Sexually Liberated, You're 16." Just kind of talking about the idea that, like, there's a lot of weird pressure. Like, there's always pressures amongst weird sexualization of minors. Like, that's always been a thing, unfortunately. But I don't know, just like the worsening of it with social media and like the weird desire. And like, as someone who looked like, a cis female when I was like 15, 16, like, holy shit, I definitely got it. And a lot of my friends were doing the same thing, and now all of us are here like, wow, I regret flirting with 40-year-old man online. Like,
Yeah.
And it's just like, I just kind of wanted to echo the sentiments of the video that if anyone happens to hear this who is a minor or anything like that, stop. Like, I don't know, because I think especially in spaces that are more alternative,
less monitored too.
yeah,
Less eyes,
like there's this kind of belief that like putting your own safety aside is like uncool or whatever, or that you're like a quirky manic pixie dream girl if you put yourself in danger and you just don't care. And I'm like, no, that's not cool. It's not quirky. You're gonna grow up and you're gonna regret it for a really long time.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially to the extent of like, you're being a pixie manic dream girl for what? For like what exact? How exactly are you being that way? Oh, like fucking married men on
Like,
Grindr for.
like, you're not, especially because I feel like that belief and that kind of image of what a cool hip girl is, like, you don't realize that that is manipulation. Like, you're not doing all of those things because you want to and you think it makes you cool. You're being spoon-fed the belief that it makes you cool.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, where a lot of the harm comes in, because you realize retroactively, like, wow, that was not me. Like,
Yeah.
I did not invite any of that, and yet I did because I thought I should.
Yeah.
Which is very heavy, and I apologize for...
I mean, it's not heavy, but yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think there's definitely this, like, weird infliction, and I think it has to do with, like, a lot of PR with this, like, because, everybody likes sex.
Right.
Well, I shouldn't say that, because there are asexual people out there, but, most people like sex. It's a pretty popular topic. It's, and, it's just something that's, like, kind of in our innate brain. It's this very almost spiritual thing about us that, like, almost informs us about our place in the world a little
For
bit.
sure.
And we kind of can go, like, oh, this thing, like, the more I have, the more liberated I am, the more nastier I'm doing it, then the better I am. And, like, that's not the case. And the people who are pushing that message are usually the people who, tend to be the ones who don't like having fingers up their butt and want to fuck the shit out of you all day and then not have you come.
They're the ones benefiting from you feeling that way.
Yeah, who are in this like, and hey, I'm kind of I'm a girl who's into like some, light I guess I want to say like misogyny play of like, you bitch or whatever.
Right.
But again, this is all like in different contexts. The sexual thing is not something of the binary, like this is right, this is wrong.
Yeah.
Or like, this says about you and this doesn't say about you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's like a big thing too of there's such a big difference between.
But if you're 16, don't have sex with 4-year-old men. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
Just if you don't like, I don't want to be your dad and say like don't have sex, but just I don't know, just do it with people your own age and at a good pace and just don't talk to weird men online. Just don't do it. You'll regret it.
Yeah.
It will be not fun.
Yeah, no, and just like, be safe, don't...
Wear a condom.
Yeah. But like, there's also this kind of weirdness, I think, because there's such a difference between two people who have introspectively figured out what they like and don't like, or more people, I shouldn't say two people, but however many people who figure out what they like and don't like through introspection. There's this mutual trust and respect. They're both of ages that can consent to having sex with each other. All that good stuff. And then there's like also these weird pressures of like, because I don't know, I noticed in recent years, especially in online spaces, and again, more kind of alternative leaning online spaces, where BDSM really shot up to becoming this like extra hip topic compared to before, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, I think it's like a sexy topic to say, and like, it's very aesthetic. People love the aesthetics. I would debate whether they're actually into S&M or if they're just into light spanking with the paddle.
Yeah, which is fine.
Which is fine, yeah. I'm not kink shaming, you do you. You do
like,
you, boo.
That's a big thing
There's
about it.
There's nothing wrong with being vanilla.
Exactly. That's what I'm getting to, of like, around when that was really spiking up, there was this big thing of like, oh, you're not cool because you're not into getting pissed on and abused or whatever. And I just remember...
Oh, so you saw my old comments. I should delete those.
No. And I just remember thinking about how weird it was, because especially in heterosexual spaces, I think, not exclusively, but it's very common that, a man is filling a more dom role and a woman is expected to fill a more submissive role.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're making BDSM this like weird standard that every woman should be okay with, it sounds a lot like you're expecting women to tolerate violence towards them, which is really uncool, especially when you look at the history.
Well, yeah, just as like a general like standard where that's like, that's what all women want. That's like that's what a bitch wants. They want a bad boy. And if they don't want
it, they're a prude and they suck.
They're the fucking librarian who's got a fucking dry sandy pussy, bitch.
Yeah. So it's just like, there's such a weird line of like, it's almost like the waves of feminism in kind of a way where it's like, better than before, but still not right where we need it to be, in the sense that, like, it's great that BDSM is, talked about, especially in the sense of people spreading really important information, like, trust who you're doing it with, and don't make bad decisions, basically, and everything. And that should definitely be a part of, like, sex ed at certain ages, I think. But also a really big stress needs to happen on, like, and if that's not your thing, you're not alone. That's great, too. Because
you're not going to get any sex.
Well, because sex is such a fluid thing, and it looks different for everybody.
Yeah. Some people like to watch their wives get fucked by someone else. Some people like it missionary. it's the small differences that make the world go round.
Yeah, and then also just redefining sex too, because there's so much shit of like, sex is penis in vagina, and you're like, no, it can be none of that, or
Yeah,
it can
be a
that.
peg and an asshole.
It's just, I don't know. Sex ed needs to be better in so many ways.
Oh yeah, I mean, just like to the extent of just like teaching people of like, you know, just like fucking, you know, it's still a fucking shocker that this country doesn't have like any really comprehensive, even like just typical cis gay shit.
Yeah.
Where they're like, hey, yo, let's talk about anal sex.
Mm-hmm.
Like, at least, especially when, in our experience in Florida, especially my experience, like, you know, oh, God, no. There was never, the extent of sex ed was the PE teacher would awkwardly shuffle into the classroom and read out of a biology textbook that they had highlight, and it was issued back in 1992, and it was going like, so when a man and a bumblebee get together, they fuck. Like, that was my fucking sex ed experience.
Honestly, you want to hear something really funny?
What?
Due to going to, like, a weird charter school, when they scheduled our sex ed classes for my grade, and then the projector wasn't working, so they just didn't do anything. And I've never had a formal sex ed class in my entire life.
I believe it. In fucking Florida, it's a joke. It's a fucking joke, the sex ed. They're just like...
Yeah.
And it's no fucking shock that, like, half my fucking friends... Oh, I shouldn't say my friends, but half of my acquaintances that I knew back in fucking school are now, like, with children. They're younger than me.
Yeah. And, like, props to you if that's what you want, but, like...
again, I'm not judging, like, your personal story or anything, but, you know, we do need to say that, like, it's kind of a little fucked up that, like, a vast majority of American families in Florida are unplanned.
Yeah.
That's a little weird, and no one seems to be mentioning that. We just kind of accept that that's the norm, and we should just be cool with it, and we just go, like, yeah, that's just how America works. That's the American dream. You think you're starting a band, you fuck up Peggy Hill, and bam, you got yourself Bobby Hill.
I also, while we're here, I really want to recommend the Instagram account, Queer Sex Therapy. Very good account.
I have to follow them.
Oh, you do have to follow that.
Oh, yeah. I don't know that one.
I'll send them to you.
I was too busy on the Mad TV Instagram.
Well, there's also a lot of talk about, like, because obviously any, like, trans and queer inclusive sex ed is great. But they also talk a lot about just emotional aspects of sex, and, like, there's a lot of awareness that they do of, like, it's okay if you struggle to orgasm, like, if there's something, or, like, if you cry when you have orgasms, or, like, all of these things that happen to people that are, like, and people are weird talking about it. They talk about it, and then there's always all these comments of, like, whoa, I've never met anyone also like that, and it's just, I don't know. Their posts make me happy. So that would be another thing, that if I was designing my perfect, anarchist revolution sex ed program, I would definitely include a lot of that type of stuff too.
I think there just needs to be a lot more open discussion about sex that's, like, more past just, like, comedy, which is good. I'm completely fine with, you know, because comedy and art and these silly little things that us little apes that are walking on two legs like doing to cope and pass the time and understand ourselves a little bit better. You know, I that's all great and fun, and that's really what can help us, or at least especially in my case, and I think a lot of people from the trans community that I hear are really what pushes them outside of themselves and helps them go, like, aha, this is what, like, oh my God, I found this moment in me. But you know, there's always need for, after the realization, like, that actual nurturing moment of sitting down with that realization and being like, okay, what does this mean to me? what does it mean materially? What do I need to do? How can I, what's going to happen? Because unfortunately, we don't really have much infrastructure in this country that, is like, oh, you're trans? Well, okay, here's your personal bureaucratic assistant who will help you with finding out what exact needs you need estrogen-wise and HRT. And, it's like these are very privileged things that most people will not have access to. And even the people who do have access to it is very minimal and is handled by people who, are just kind of friends of trans people, and very few of them turn out being trans. Thankfully, that is changing. There's more of a professional field of trans people, and I'm happy to see that, but, still, we're still a very burgeoning community, and it's, not much support past there. But I do think it would help a lot more if there was just more places and opportunities for people to have like an honest, non-judgmental environment to be like, okay, when I fall asleep, I have fantasies of being a woman. What the fuck does that mean? Like,
Right.
what, not just shoo it off, just thinking like, oh, I'm being ridiculous. I'm a big businessman because I was born with pee-pee.
Yeah, that was weird anyway.
Yeah. Just like this typical natural like American mentality of just like, well, back to business. Yes, back to the factory.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that too would be so much better if because I think even if there was more information on it readily available, that just, it would be so much easier to tell is the point I'm getting at. Because I think there's so many people who have to fight for the knowledge that they are trans and what that means.
And they will endlessly debate with themselves if they're making this up inside of themselves, and because they're starting at a late start, and they're going to need to deprogram a lot of themselves to even get to the real answer of it, because we didn't start. They already started at a point where society fucking hates them and doesn't want them to happen.
Exactly, yeah. So yeah, I mean, if there was just more knowledge too of the resources, I think that, because even there's even organizations out there that'll mail you free binders, and yeah, they've got year-long waiting lists, but shit like that, or trans legal groups that'll help you change your name and gender marker and stuff. And if local resources like that were readily available during sex ed, or just in general,
nationwide to all communities.
Yeah, I think stuff like that would make suicide rates and that sort of thing so much lower.
Mm-hmm. And I'd honestly argue there would be a lot more trans people out there.
Yeah.
I feel we're already seeing it. The number of people who do not identify with the gender that they were originally born at is only skyrocketing. It's going up. There's a lot more people, especially in Gen Z, who are going by they, them pronouns. And let's honestly face it, if we had more open discussion about gender and sexuality from early time, we probably again would have had way more people come to terms with themselves that they are this. Because I guarantee thousands without any question of trans people who will die not ever coming to terms with what they really are.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like I was saying, my friend personally has this funny little theory that in history books the 2020s are going to be late 2010s and 2020s are going to be referred to as the gender revolution.
Oh, shut the
which no,
it's the gender dark age, motherfuckers.
It's that, but I mean, no, if you think about it, just online and how much has happened in that time period, it's not a revolution as in oh, everything's fixed, but compared, if you compare the average Joe Schmo's belief about gender now to 20 years ago, oh my god, they at least probably have heard the word transgender before.
Yeah, I
which
mean,
I think
especially
is such
now.
a-
I mean, everyone's using it, whether to be a fucking dog whistle with the conservative crowd or with, like, virtue signaling with fucking Democrats.
Yeah, and, like, as shitty as those two things are, it is such a weird, like, milestone compared to before where it was just like, don't talk about it.
Oh, yeah, well, no, we have visibility, and we're finally coming out
for better
of the...
or for worse.
Yeah,
but-
I mean, we're coming out of the fucking darkness, and I mean, now we're seeing things with fucking, you know, in the Florida state with, like, don't say gay, and them, you know, and even that, taking small little baby steps to see if they can get around, and, you know, we're seeing some things that at least on this one issue, at the very least, of that concerns my community, is that we're starting to see, you know, even people like the Republican governor, I think, of Kentucky, even was, like, vetoed a bill that was going to basically, you know, it was basically the don't say gay for Kentucky. And he vetoed that. So, I mean, you know, and fuck that guy, fuck politicians, but, you know, and if, you know, I'm playing the game. I'm fucking, you know, I'm seeing this as the situation as it is. And, you know, victories like that shouldn't be thrown away or undermined.
Yeah.
You know, people are, at the very least, on the legislative level, at least willing to cajole us to, you know, even if it's for virtue signaling, vote counting, or whatever, you know, I'll take it, because the alternative is having, you know, the government outright, like, ban us and just create an even more nourishing environment for more hate crimes to be committed against trans people, which is going to skyrocket eventually. Things are not, like, you know, things are going to get worse, especially for trans people.
Yeah, I definitely see that. But the increased numbers of trans people, I also think, is a really good sign of kind of what I was saying earlier about how I think ultimately gender is just going to cease to exist. Like,
yeah, I think we're definitely getting to a point, especially in
even
this
if it's in
country.
like 100 years, but, like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely getting, I think, especially how I'm seeing here, there's definitely a more and more, like, cultural zeitgeist movement of embracing less, or, like, I don't even know if they're, like, for abolishing gender standards, but they're definitely for revising them, or updating them, at the very least. And, you know, I'll take that with at least a little bit better of a sign than, you know, some of these fucking mouth-breathing lockjaw people who are like, let's go back to the 50s.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the cool suburbs. I want to go fight in Ukraine and get myself a medal.
Yeah.
And go write a book. Thank you so much for listening. As always, I'm Fem Marks, aka Marceline Coy. I was joined by Merlin Kirby, who goes by Angsty Vegan. You can find both of us on Instagram. We have this podcast. We release it when we can. Hopefully it's going to be a little bit more frequent now that we're kind of both in a better place. It's springtime and things are looking beautiful and great. There's still shit, but, there's a certain flower power energy through the air. Enjoying the nice rose petals falling from the trees and landing softly on the concrete. It's really beautiful, something to see. But yeah, I hope... What?
Did you just say rose petals falling from the tree?
Yeah, I meant,
No, I know, but I just listened to it, comprehended it, and it got me. I love rose trees.
It's yeah.
No, I agree. It's very nice imagery.
But yeah, anyways, yeah, so, fuck Merlin, but, hope you're doing alright, hope you're staying safe, stay strong out there, and we will see you again the next time we get a chance. Bye.
Bye.
There's an empty suit of armor propped up in Pa's easy chair, reading Paul's letters to the church as if Paul was still there. Mark hits on her makeup to cover up her plight, for she that must lie awake next to that armor every night. The babe in the back room cries like a wailing ghost. The priest said whoops the baby, sneezes, turns into a pig. And I turn to my liquor for much needed swig. Went in, walks my brother, his teeth dragging by his feet. I said, brother, what a long face. He said, kid, this ain't me. I used to be the hero of this motion picture show. And you can't even walk in out of more, and ain't nothing else to know. Hey, maladjusted young man with one long skinny dollar bill swoops in like a vulture to feast upon a kill. But a kill been long spoiled in the blazing summer heat. Ain't no rest for the wicked, ain't no food for the weak. So I dug through my closet for a pair of clean clothes. All I found was Bojangles and my own self in sepia tone. So I talked awkwardly to myself for a moment or two. Bojangles sat there patiently, whistling a tune.